Hi, I'm Johnny and you're watching a Hexy Beast. And on this episode, I'm going to be doing a solo review of this game right here, The Lost Ruins of Arnak by Czech Games Edition. Anyway, let's get this one to the table, shall we? Okay, so this is Lost Ruins of Arnak. On an uninhabited island in uncharted seas, explorers have found traces of a great civilization. Now you will lead an expedition to explore the island, find lost artifacts and face fearsome guardians, all on a quest to learn the island's secrets. The Lost Ruins of Arnak combines deck building and worker placement in a game of exploration, resource management and discovery. So, let's see how it plays. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do in a game of Lost Ruins of Arnak is choose our player, and for this game I'm going to choose a green. We're also going to take the meeples belonging to that player and their research track marker. As well as that, we're also going to grab the 4 starting cards that belong to my colour, as well as 2 fear cards, which we're then going to shuffle to make a starting deck. So, moving on. Then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the other player boards and flip it over so that we're on the solo side of it. And as you can see, there's various spaces on it, which I'll explain when we get to using them. So I'm just going to place that around there. Also, the AI is going to take the remaining colour meeples, and it's also going to take this magnifying glass only for the research track. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take 5 of these plain white solo tiles, and then you're going to choose from either 5 green or 5 red, and because we're playing on easy, we're going to play with these 5 green ones. And we're basically going to shuffle these together in order to form the AI's action deck. Right by here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take these assistant tiles and we're going to shuffle them up, and then we're going to leave them in 4 piles in these spaces on the board. So one by there, and one by there. As well as that, we're going to take our magnifying glass from our solo AI, as well as our book and magnifying glass, and place them here, ready for when they move up the research track. This would usually be on the bottom of the board, but I don't really have enough table space, so I've got the board sideways and this off to the side with my resources on it. Also, while we're here, what we should do is populate each one of these spaces with some resources as depicted on the spaces themselves, just like this. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these fear cards here, place them in this spot on the board, and I'm going to take all these item cards here, which you can tell because they cost by coins. I'm going to shuffle them up and put them in a space. So they're all shuffled. I'm going to put them in this space, and then I'm going to take all these artifact cards, which, as you can tell, they paid for with compasses as opposed to gold. And I'm going to just shuffle these as well and put them off to the side by here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this very pretty Moonstaff token and we're going to put it here, indicating that we're starting on round 1. Now what we're going to do is we're going to populate this card row using item cards from the right and shuffling them that way, and using artifact cards from the left, and they'll be coming along this way. Just like this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to randomize all these purple tokens and place them on these spaces depending on how they look. So if you look here, this one is a face up one, and if you look at the top spaces, we have one that's face up and one that's face down. So I'm just going to randomize these and place them out on the board as indicated, just like this. Then what we're going to do is we're going to shuffle up these research tokens, and we're basically going to be placing them on any space that doesn't have an indicated player count. So for example, if you look here, you can see this little 4 by here. That means that would only be used in a 4-player game. So as long as we stick to this row, and this row, we're all fine set up for solo. Just like this. And after we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to place 2 random ones face down by here. Then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting these bonus points tiles into these rows here, 2 of each, because we're in a 2-player game technically in the solo mode. So there would be 2 points in each space on this one. There would be 2 6 points in each space here, and then 2 11-point ones at the top, just like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take all these little blue tokens, and we're basically going to block off all the double boot spaces on the bottom row, just like this. As well as that, we're also going to take all these double-sided extra tokens in case we run out of resources. We can use these to mark that we got stacks of 3. And if we run out of fear cards, every one of these we accept will basically mean that they're going to be -2 points instead of -1. So anyway, that's the boards. I think we're pretty much ready to start the game. One last thing, because we're playing solo, we need to take our 1 coin and our 1 compass and put them in our crates by here. And we also need to draw 5 cards off this deck to form our starting hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. There should be 1 there. So we're going to be starting the game with a hand that looks a bit like this. So first things first though, start of every game, first thing we got to do is activate the AI. So let's do that now. Okay, so in the Lost Ruins of Arnak, the AI always goes first. And the way he activates is he'll turn top tile over and perform an action on that tile, which in this case is to place a figurine on a space that contains one of these gems. So we're going to go do that now. Also, if there was a tie between spaces, this decision arrow would determine which way round we would pick them. And I'll be able to explain that, I'm sure, pretty soon. Okay, so based on this solo tile, the AI is going to place one of his meeples, blocking our access to this space by here. Okay, so in Lost Ruins of Arnak, player turns basically work in a way that you are going to take 1 main action and 1 free action. And as you notice, there's this little lightning bolt that'll basically mark anything that's a free action. So if I wanted to right now, I could say play this into my play area and just get an extra compass without having to use my main action. But what I'm going to do is, for my first main action, is I'm going to go through the first action, which, if you check your play aid, is the dig at a site. So I'm going to do that now. So in order to dig at a site, I'm going to need to pay its travel costs. And the site I've been eyeing up is this compass site by here. If you notice, there's a travel cost associated with it. If you're looking at our cards, you can see that there's also an icon in the top left corner. This basically means that if we just put one of these in our play area, instead of getting this effect, we're going to get its travel icon so that we can travel to a space. And I want to move to that compass space, and I'm going to need 1 travel icon. And it just so happens on a fear card, even though it's with -1 point at the end of the game, you can still use it for travel. So I'm going to put this in my play area, and I'm going to place my meeple onto this compass space in the base camp row. And that means I'm going to get 2 compasses to place in my play area. So here's those 2 compasses. Just going to put these 2 compasses by here. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to discard both of these cards into my play area so that I can use their free action of gaining coins. So I'm going to gain 2 coins as well. Okay, so after my turn, what's going to happen is the AI is going to activate, and this time, this means basically that he's going to remove a guardian, but in this case there's none on the board, so all he's going to do is move 1 space up the research track. If it was round 5, this tile would not action. Anyway, let's go move him up his research track. Okay, so the AI wants to place this guy on the research track, but there's 2 spaces to choose from. So how do we decide between the 2? Well, you may have noticed when we drew this tile, at the back of this deck has a directional arrow, and basically that means it'll choose either a left or right, which is why they have this dark bottom on the tile, to make sure you orientate them correctly. Anyway, so this means he's going to choose the space on the left, so let's have a look. Okay, so the left space in this case is going to be this one here, so he's just going to go here. It's important to note that the AI doesn't actually gain any resources. The only things he'll gain is those purple points tiles we was on about before, some guardians, and he'll also buy cards from the card rows. Anyway, let's get back onto our turn. Okay, so the action I want to show you this round is the exploration action. And the space I'm thinking about exploring into is probably going to be this one by here. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So first, pay attention that it says we're going to be using the level 1 temple tiles. And it's going to cost us 3 compasses, and we're going to have to pay a ship in travel in order to move there. Okay, so that's back to my play area where I'm going to spend these 3 compasses, and I'm also going to put this exploration card into my play area as a free action for my travel, because it's got this little ship in the corner, which means I'm going to be able to move this meeple to an exploration space, and I'm going to show you how that works now. Okay, so here's the space I've chosen to explore. I've already paid my compasses, so I'm going to place my worker here, and I'm going to gain this to my playboard. As well as that, I'm also going to take one of these level 1 temples and one of these guardians and layer them accordingly onto the space. So, as soon as I do this, first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to gain the rewards on this part, which is actually 1 fear card, which is not necessarily a good thing. Ouch. But we do get 1 compass and a gem, so it's going to be quite useful to us. Also worth noting, if we don't actually defeat this guardian by the end of the round, it will mean that we will actually suffer another fear card into our deck. But looking at what's here, I think I've pretty much decided what I'm doing next turn. But first, let's go activate the AI. Okay, so let's activate the AI. And he is going to be doing an explore action. And as we're on round 1, he's also going to be placing a guardian on top of it. Okay, so the way this works is he's going to basically explore the same as we just did. But he's going to have a preference for the bottommost row in the level 1 space. And he's going to also have a preference for the leftmost space in that row. So let's go action that now. So leftmost space in the bottom row of level 1, we're going to place this. Also, he is going to gain 1 of these tokens, and I'm just going to show you how they work on his board right now. So because of the AI's explore action, he picked up this compass token by here, and if you look across the top of the AI's board, he has a space that is marked by each one of the front-facing spaces of one of these tokens. So I'm going to place this by here for now, so he's going to get 3 points at the end of the game for that one. If another compass one came out, it would get placed face down by here. Also, any other face down tokens would get placed by here, which means they're only worth 2 points each at the end of the game because of this -1. Anyway, let's move on to our turn. Okay, so I've only got 1 card in my hand, and I'm not going to be using it for travel this turn. But if we look at this Guardian here, what we can do as a main action is challenge the Guardian. And we just so happen to have that movement that we need to complete this challenge, and the gem in our supplies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in my play area, and I'm going to discard this gem in order to defeat this Guardian. Now the cool thing about Guardians is that they're always worth 5 points to us at the end of the game. But also, as a one-time use throughout the game, I can flip it over to use this effect by here, which in this case is a plane travel, which I'll show you more about the travel now. Okay, so when we're talking about travel, basically you'll notice there's a hierarchy to the icons. The boot icon is the weakest icon, and then you've got the car and the boat icons, which are a step above the boot icon, and then you've got the plane icon, which can be used as any of the below. You can also spend 2 coins on your turn to hire a pilot. Anyway, let's move on. So I'm just going to take this Guardian I just defeated and place it next to my player board right by here. So, what does the AI want with us this time? Aha! So if you look here, this purple icon means points, and anything with purple is good for us. But in this case, it means he's going to take an artifact from the board with the lowest points value. So let's go do that now. So the AI is actually going to take this card away here. Whenever a card is taken away, it is replenished. And once he takes it, he's going to put it into this section of his player board, which means at the end of the game, this is going to be worth 1 point to him. So we want to make sure he doesn't get too many cards as well. Okay, so just because I've got no cards in my hand right now, it doesn't mean I can't do anything. So what I'm going to do this turn is I think I'm actually going to buy a card from the item row. And I've got 3 coins, so let's have a look at what we can afford. Okay, so this card is going to cost me 1 coin, but it does give me double boat travel, which is good for those top spaces. And it also gives me a free action to get 2 gold pieces. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to spend 1 coin to acquire this. And when I acquire a card, it always goes to the bottom of the deck. Also, shift everything along, and then refill the row on the end. So I'm just going to take this gold pan I just bought and put it on the bottom of my deck after spending 1 coin. So let's see what the AI is doing this turn. And what he's going to do is going to place one of his meeples onto the highest money space he can, and it'll be the furthest right he can. So in this case, what he wants to do is place his meeple in the highest space he can, which has coins in it, and the furthest right. But if we look here, there's no spaces that have coins in them that are available. So what he's going to do, he's actually going to place his meeple into this space by here. Okay, back to my turn, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this so that I can get one of these compasses. Then, if you notice by here, there's some very special spaces across the top of my board. And right now, I think one of the best things for me to do would be to cover up this space. So basically at the end of the game, we would score all the points denoted here unless we cover them up with one of these. And as a free action this turn, I can cover one of these up and gain one of the benefits from by here. And I think in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to gain the blue arrow. So I'm going to place this guy by here as a free action and gain the blue arrow by here. These arrowheads, which are very nice little plastic pieces to be fair. And I'm going to place that in my crates. Okay, so for my main action this turn, what I'm actually going to do is I think I'm going to go up one space on that research track. I'm going to show you how to do this now. Okay, so in order to move up the research track, what I would need to do is pay the cost of the path I'm trying to achieve. So in this case, it would cost me 1 compass and 1 arrowhead, which I'm going to pay now. So here's my compass and my arrowhead. I'm going to get discarded. And I'm going to move my magnifying glass into this spot by here, meaning that I will immediately gain the rewards printed in the magnifying glass space on this side of the track, which in this case is 1 coin. So here's my coin. It's also worth noting at this point that we also have a book, which can never be ahead of our magnifying glass. So basically, as you can see, there's different rewards. So in this case, if we were to move this square one up to this row, for example, we couldn't go past our magnifying glass, but we could occupy the same height. It would mean that we'd also gain a white-sided assistant, but we can't do that right now. I was just showing you how research works. Okay, so the AI is always going to be working through his stack of tiles. So we're going to reveal his next one, and in this case he's going to be placing the rightmost space with tablets in it. So let's do that. Well, the only available space with tablets in it is by here, so he's going to go there. Then it's back to our turn again, and I'm looking at the market, and I can actually see something that looks very appealing to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spend 3 of my coins to buy a card from the card row. And the card I'm going to buy is going to be this binoculars card, because it gives me a ship travel action, and it also allows me to activate any level 1 site without having to place a worker on it. Notice though, it is going to be a main action when I use it because there's no lightning bolt on this card. So I'm just going to take this and put it on the bottom of my deck. Also, shifting all the cards along and replacing the one on the end, just like before. So this binoculars is going on the bottom of my deck. There we go. Now the AI is going to activate again. Okay, so the AI is going to move up the research track and discard one of our allies. So first things first, let's get it up the research track. So because the arrow was pointing right, he's actually going to jump into this space, and he's basically just going to remove this face-up token reward from us from the game. As well as that, we also have to remember about the assistant. Okay, so because it wants an assistant, it's going to take the top assistant from the tallest stack. And because all these stacks are equal, we're going to go back to that decision arrow, which was on the right. It means it's going to pick the rightmost one, and it's just going to remove this from the game. And because there's not really anything much I can do on my turn, what I'm actually going to do at this point is I'm going to pass. But don't forget, the AI still has to go through his whole tile deck. So now we're going to move this over, so he's going to want to get the lowest point item. And because we've actually got a load of 1 point items here, what he's actually going to do is use his decision arrow, which in this case is pointing left, and he's going to choose the leftmost card to remove from the row. So this is going to go onto his pile on his player board. And as usual, everything shuffles along, and the end card is replaced by here. So let's just place that in his card stack and see what his next action is going to be. Okay, so he's going to place a meeple on the highest space he can with compasses. Okay, so looking at it, there's nowhere for him to actually go. So in this case, he just doesn't place a meeple. And now for the final AI activation of round 1, and he's just going to place himself on the arrowhead space, just like this. Okay, so that's the end of round 1. And what we're going to do is the first part of the end of the round is we're going to return all the meatballs from on the board. Also worth it is to pay attention to the fact that we're still on this space, but because we defeated his guardian, we're not actually going to take a fear card for being on there. But if we was on this space by here, where it does still have a guardian, we would actually take a fear card as well. So we're just going to return our own meeples as well. Okay, at this point what we do then is take all the cards in our play area, shuffle them all up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our deck and we're just going to place it on top of the cards we shuffled. So that the cards we've brought this round are always going to be near the top. Also at this point, if we had acquired any assistance, so say for example, if we had this guy here and he was here and we'd used him at some point for either his coin or his wing ability as a free action, then at this point of the end of round part, we would actually reset all our assistants as well. But we don't quite have them yet, so let's just put him back in his pile. Okay, so the next part of the end of the round is to remove a card from each side of the moon staff. So in this case, this is going to go into this discard pile, exile pile even, and it's going to go into that exile pile. And what we're going to do then is we're going to move the moon staff across, and then we're just going to draw 2 artifacts into the spaces on the left of the moon staff. So as you can see, as the rounds increase, we'll have less items, but we'll have more artifacts. Anyway, so let's just get back on to the rest of the end of the round stuff. So also what we do at this point is we're going to take all these AI tiles and shuffle them up, and then we're basically just going to draw our hand of 5 cards ready to go in to round 2. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're ready just for the AI to take his first turn of round 2. Okay, so the first action for the AI this round is he's going to take the lowest value item from the card row. Which, in this case, even though all these are tied, his decision arrow is on the right, so he's going to take this bear trap off the end by here. And that's going to get replaced. And into the AI's card pile that goes. So let's have a look what we should do for our first main action and whatever free actions we have. Now, we don't have much in the way of resources, so I think first thing we should do is actually use this activate any level 1 site as a main action. So we're going to place that in our play area, and we're going to activate this site right here. So we're going to get 1 tablet and 1 arrowhead. So that's 1 arrowhead and 1 tablet. And also as a free action this turn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this gold pan card to get 2 gold. So I've done that into my play area and gained 2 gold. Now AI is going to try and ruin our day, and he's going to go for the gem space, which I thought he would. Okay, so unlike last time, because there was actually a higher space for him to block, this one by here, which also contains gems, instead of going by here, what he's actually going to do is he's actually going to place his meeple at this spot. So we're going to put him there. If there was 2 in the same row, we would have to pick based on decision arrow, left or right. Okay, looking at what I've got here, what I might actually do this turn is use these 2 as free actions to gain 2 compasses. So I'm just going to do that. So we've got our 2 compasses. And for our main action this turn, what I'm actually going to do is I am going to place this guy using this as my travel, so that I can gain the 2 tablets from this space. Okay, so that's 2 tablets. And back to the AI, let's see what they do. They want to remove a guardian again, but as they're not actually on a site with a guardian on it, they're just going to go up the research track again. So up they go into this space, and there's no tile for them to take away from us this time. Okay, so for my main action this turn, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore. And even though I've got no cards left, don't forget, I do have this guardian tile, which I'm going to flip for its plane icon, which is any icon below it. So I'm going to do that and spend these 3 compasses in order to explore. And the space I'm going to choose to explore in this time is going to be this space right by here. So I'm going to place my meeple, gain this token, which if you look, actually lets me get rid of a card, which would be nice. I might exile that. I might use that. And then we're basically just going to do the same as before. We're going to take this level 1 site, gain its rewards, and then we're going to place a guardian on it. So this now goes by here. I gain a coin and an arrowhead. I think it's starting to make sense now, isn't it? And then if I'm still here at the point when my meeple is taken back, then I'm going to take a fear card as well. Also worth noting is that now I flip this, I can no longer use it again. So I still get the 5 points, but I'm not able to use that travel icon that was on the other side of it anymore. Okay, so I can flip this guy to get rid of a card. So I'm going to do that now. And the card I'm going to get rid of is one of these fear cards. So let's see what the AI has to say about that. Oof. We're in round 2 now. So instead of placing a guardian, he's just going to place the site itself. And he's going to favour the left row. Okay, so because he always favours the bottom row, even though there isn't a space on the far left here, but there is still a space in the bottom row, he's actually going to go in this space by here. So we're going to place this, take this and place it in the coin spot on his player board, and then we're just going to place one site by here. So this goes into this space, and then it's back onto my turn. Okay, as one of my free actions this turn, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this and place it here, losing me 2 points, in order to spend 1 coin to gain a red gem. And you'll see why I'm doing this now. Because for my main action of the turn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my book 1 space up the research track. Okay, so because my magnifying glass is by here, and I've spent the required cost, I'm able to move my book into this space. And the main difference here is that instead of gaining the rewards in this space, you'll actually gain the rewards in this space, which in this case is an assistant. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go pick an assistant from the 3 piles on the resource board. Ooh, choices. I think the one I'm going to go for in this case is going to be this one, because it'll let us exile a card as a free action whenever we want. So I'm just going to take this and place it into the assistant spot on my board, just like this. And to be honest, there's nothing worth taking out of my hand at the minute, so I'm not going to use it this round. I'm probably going to keep it for next round. So let's see what he wants to do now. He's going to take the lowest point artifact, which in this case is pretty obvious, so he's just going to take this one and put it in his stack. Okay, so I think by this point you've got a rough idea of how the game is played, so I'm just going to show you a few things about the research track, then I'm just going to jump to the end and talk about endgame scoring, and then I'm going to tell you what I think. So let me just explain a few things about the research track. Okay, so if we continue going up this research track, in the ways we have been, removing tokens, this keeps going up here, etc. This guy starts catching up, blah blah blah, you get the idea. But basically, whenever one of us get to this top spaces here, if we were to go one more space, the first person to cross the line would go into this space by here. So if it was me, I would go here. And I would score those points at the end of the game for being in that spot. And if this guy came up second behind me, we'd go by here. So it's also worth noting that these tokens can also be acquired at this point if you choose a research action. If you were to spend just one set of these resources, you would get one of these from the bottom row. If you were to spend 2 sets, so for example, if I was to spend 1 coin, 2 tablets, and a gem, instead of getting one from the bottom row here, I would get one from this pile. And basically, if I was to spend a gem and compass and arrowhead, I would get one from this pile. If I can fulfill all of these costs, I will gain an 11-point tile. If the AI is trying to gain one, what it'll first do is just pick one based on its direction arrow. So for example, in this case, if the arrow was pointing left, it would go for this one, and that would get added to his score at the end of the game. So as rounds continue, the Moonstaff will move along until it's on round 5, and at the end of round 5, we go into scoring. So let's do that now. Okay, so the way scoring works is like this. You're going to be trying to score points against an AI. So first you're going to score based on your spots on the research track. So for example here, I've scored 27 based on both spots, and the AI has scored 23. Also based on the tiles you take off the top. In this case, I scored 2, the AI scored 0. Also going to take into account the purple tokens that you've picked up, whether they're face up or face down, and don't forget to minus 1 point for the ones in the stack on the enemy board. So in this case I got 13 and the AI got 19. Then we've also got to take into account the guardians we captured, which are worth 5 points each, so I got 2 guardians and so did they in this case. And then it's just the values on the cards. So I had managed to have 16 points worth of cards, they had 13 points worth of cards. I had -1 from a fear card in my deck, which meant that at the end of this one particular game, it was actually 65 by 65. But you're basically just trying to beat. I would say a draw is a loss in this case, because you want to beat the score, don't you? You don't want to just equalize it. But anyway, that is basically how the game is played and how it's scored. Now I'm just going to go back to the table and tell you what I think of it. Okay, so that brings us on to the part of the video where I tell you what I think. And first category is going to be scored out of is aesthetics. And this is going to be a bit of a strange one for me, but for me, I'm actually going to give it a 10 out of 10 for this. Because I feel that the art is just absolutely beautiful. I think that everything pops. You can really, even just down to the visual design, you're never struggling to figure out what each space does. It's just generally a very visually appealing game to me. So I really enjoyed the art style, and I just really, every single card, I stopped to look at it. So I decided to give it a 10 for aesthetics, because I just think it looks lovely. And it takes up a lot of table space, and that is also quite impressive. And now we're going to be moving on to the next category, which is gameplay. And I just have to say that I really enjoyed the decision space in this. It wasn't too heavy. I felt it was really easy to learn. The actual decision space between the deck building, the worker placement, and the general Euro track and resource management, as well as a mixture of hand management, because you only reset your deck at the end of a round. I just find there was a lot of interesting stuff, especially including the fact that cards went onto the bottom of your deck, and when you shuffle they went underneath. Meant that you was often able to make some really tactical decisions while you were playing. It just really seemed to blend all 3 of those genres together masterfully. So for gameplay, I've also decided to give this one a 10 out of 10. Now we're going to be moving on to accessibility, and it kind of pains me to say this, But this is actually the only category where it's going to lose a point, and that's only purely down to the size of the board. Because I know, for me, it was literally at the limit of my table space, so I imagine there are a lot of gamers out there that won't be able to get it to the board. So even though I think that the rulebook is absolutely masterfully written, to the point that I only have to read it once, and I just left the reference page open for the rest of the time, and I've been able to play and show you this game in a matter of a week. So it's not really, it's super accessible, but like I said, that just the sheer board size might be enough to put 1 or 2 people off of actually buying it and putting it on their table. So for that reason, it has to get a 9 out of 10 for accessibility, which is a shame really, because I wanted to give it 10s across the board, but it really did have to lose that 1 point just for the amount of space it took up. So anyway, let's get on to the total scores. Okay, so that gives Lost Ruins of Arnak a 9.7 out of 10, which is an absolutely amazing score from me. Like I said before, the only thing that let it down was simply the size of the board, and that's only because that not everyone is going to have the table space in order to set it up. But I feel if you have the space for it, it really is a must-have in your collection. You can't really go wrong with it. It really does blend deck building, resource management, worker placement, and just typical Euro track stuff into a really masterful way. I just think there hasn't been anything I've seen this year that really scratches the same itch that this does, and I have a feeling that it's going to be featuring on my year 2 top 10 later in the year. So anyway, if you've enjoyed what you've been seeing here, or just want to grab a copy of the game, please feel free to check out the link to Firestone Games in my description. Also, if you like what you've been watching, please feel free to check out another one of my videos up here, and smash that subscribe button over there. Anyway, I've been Johnny, you've been watching the Hexy Beast. Thank you for watching, and most of all, stay hexy everyone!